Hi, I'm Vicky Teal. I just wrote my second book, The Absolute Woman. It's all about feminine power. My book discusses feminine power, and it also discusses my career in fashion and the history of fashion in Paris and how it all began in the 1950s and the 1960s, when before that we had people sewing in factories in France, but real fashion was haute couture. Ateliers were set up like Dior, and they had 30 or 40 sewers inside, and they had little fashion shows, and they made dresses for royalty and the wealthiest people, and the handmade clothes were done, and a typical garment took maybe a month to make, 4 or 5 fittings. You had to fit the pattern. It was a very complicated thing. And all of a sudden, a friend of mine, she decided to make something called ready-to-wear, prêt-à-porter. And so Emmanuelle Kahn and her friend Michelle Rosier, her mom owned Elle Magazine, they started to make clothes in factories that would be worn in mass. They would cut a really cute top and a really cute dress, and so they started making ready-to-wear in the 1950s. And I got to Paris in 1964, so they had already started, and you could make haute couture, you could make expensive by hand, or you could make ready-to-wear. When I got to Paris, I was with my best friend, my partner, Mia Fonsegrives. Her father was Irving Penn, and he was so famous, the great photographer for Vogue, that we got to meet some people at Vogue, and they introduced us to Dorian Lee, a fashion model who had become the fashion model president of a model agency in Paris, and she introduced us at her wedding. She had 8 weddings, and it was, I think, her 7th or 8th wedding to a very cute young guy. And at that wedding party, we got to meet the designer Louis Farreau, and he saw us in mini dresses, and we ended up showing the mini dresses in Louis Farreau's fashion show. So we got to school, we left school in May, we arrived in Paris in June, and in July, couture was, haute couture, Mia and I were showing mini dresses. We then ended up doing the costumes for a movie, What's New, Pussycat? How that happened was we were dancing like crazy in a nightclub called Castell's in Paris, and the Castell nightclub, everybody was famous. Romy Schneider was one of the famous people, Alain Delon, and these celebrities danced, and you had to be someone to get into this club. And movie producers from Hollywood were there, and they saw me and I dancing, and we had wearing skirts that were up just below our underwear. They were high thigh dresses, and the 2 producers said, "Oh my God, we want that look for our movie," and they hired us. So we had left school in May, arrived in Paris in June. We had 18 suitcases and my little puppy, and by July we had a job to start in September, and we worked July and August to make the costumes for Romy Schneider, a top star, and some other people in this movie, What's New, Pussycat? The gorgeous woman in the movie was called Ursula Andress. And we made for Ursula a snakeskin jumpsuit and with a zipper up the front, and she wore it with boots and a fur coat. And until that moment, women had not worn jumpsuits. So we were the first people to launch the jumpsuit. By the fall of 1967, me and I had a contract to do pret-a-porter, friends with Emmanuelle Kahn. She introduced us to a manufacturer, and his name is Madd, M-A-D-D, and he opened a shop, and we got to make our first ready-to-wear dresses, and these dresses were called the wrap dress. We made them for America, and Bloomingdale's bought them, and they were in the Bloomingdale's windows, and the dress was also in a magazine in America called Red Book Magazine, 1968. So I'm wearing the wrap dress here. You can see this is the pattern I had from 1968. It wraps around, it twists here, it's fitted here, it kind of drapes over the boobs, and it flares out on with a bias skirt. Set-in sleeves, and the pattern crisscrosses in the front, and it ties on the side with a belt that wraps around. 1967, we had this dress, and then we made a movie called Candy with Marlon Brando, and the star of the movie, she had the wrap dress on, and Ringo Starr, who we also dressed his beautiful wife Barbara Bach, and I had dressed his first wife Maureen. Ringo wanted the girl in the movie to wear the wrap dress, and so the girl who played Candy, we took it off her. Ringo took it off her, and so it was also in a movie. However, lo and behold, in 1973 or 4, somebody claimed that they invented the wrap dress. They had obviously seen our dress, or they're designers. You see, designers don't design all the time. Designers can also be personalities, and they hire people like me that draw, and they design. So the designer Diane von Furstenberg introduced the wrap dress, and she was an icon of publicity. She loved publicity, and she was married to a very famous prince, and she was big on publicity, and she claimed that she invented the wrap dress. So where I'm going with all this is out there to you in fashion. What did I do? What did Mia do? Mia went back to America and she became a sculptress. But what did we do? What did I do? Nothing. Nothing. It was no big deal. I made the first wrap dresses. I have the proof. Diane von Furstenberg made the wrap dress famous. So the dress I made in 1967 got to be worn by millions and millions and millions of people. I let go. And I like to tell you in fashion, there's no such thing as owning anything. Everything's copyable. Everything is all over the world. The most important thing is that you create. What happens after that, it's great if you make millions and millions of dollars, but it's also great if you created something and you were the first person to make it. And you have paperwork and proof that you made it, you feel real good because that means you're a good artist. I went on to create many other dresses, many other famous dresses, including this one. This dress is called the Pretty Woman. This dress, the Pretty Woman, was the #1 best-selling dress in Neiman Marcus and Bergdorf Goodman for 32 years. I made it in the late 70s for a store called Giorgio's in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive, and lo and behold, the person who's doing the movie Pretty Woman saw it in red in the window at Fred Hayman's Giorgio's and made it for the movie. They had somebody sew it at MGM, and they made it and they put it on Julia Roberts. But that didn't bother me. I was thrilled that Julia Roberts was wearing my red dress with the draped sleeves. I had originally made that dress in strapless for another big movie star in France, and she got to wear it, and she was called La Femme Nikita, and she was one of our most beautiful actresses in France, and I made it for her in 1971 to wear to the Cannes Film Festival, La Femme Nikita. And I feel that Anne Pariot, that was her, is the first person to have worn the Pretty Woman dress, and it was in lime green, and it was strapless. But Fred Hayman made me add sleeves, and therefore it was always in the window of Giorgio's. And Neiman Marcus said, I love that dress. And they bought it, and Bergdorf Goodman bought it, and lo and behold, it never stopped selling. So for 30 years, if you went into those stores and you wanted a gown in Jersey with bones and a draped sleeve and the draping around the hip, like in the movie Pretty Woman, that look of the red dress, it's one of the most famous dresses forever. I had the thrill of something I made going on forever. So a bad thing of having somebody else make it and put it in a movie, it didn't bother me at all. What's the most important thing is that my dress sold for Neiman's and Bergdorf's for 30 years. So if you're an artist, you don't own anything. What you have to do is do your best work. If you're in fashion, the history of fashion is so crazy. Someone can come up with a jean and slit the jean, and they think, oh my God, I've invented something. And then the next thing you know, the whole world has what you just invented yourself because someone's taken a photograph of you and that's gone viral. We don't own anything. What we have to do is do our best work as artists and constantly come up with something new. Fashion is exciting. It's a great job. It's a great career. But if you get into the fashion industry, I have one thing to ask you, and that is this. I ask you to stay calm. You don't own anything. You're not going to fight for anything. It's just be peaceful and lovely, and you'll have a very long career. Thank you. Bye.